The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was a monument to cold, ancient majesty. Its ceiling vanished into a haze of artificial clouds, and its floor was a forest of crystalline spires, each housing a representative of a species that had ruled the galaxy when humanity was still swinging from trees. For 10,000 years, this chamber had been the heart of galactic law. Today, it felt like a mausoleum for hope. Dr. Aris Thorne, the human delegation's chief xenopsychologist, stood alone in the vastness. She was not a diplomat by trade, but a student of minds and motivations. They had sent her because she understood the council members not as political entities, but as people, their fears, their pride, their ingrained biases. Now, facing the collective gaze of 100 ancient civilizations, her professional detachment felt like a paper shield against a tsunami. Her eyes, the color of weathered Earth's soil, scanned the assembly. There was Architect Prime Velnath, a being of living crystal whose thoughts pulsed in slow, geological time. In a tank of swirling methane floated the Githare, a gelatinous mass of shared consciousness. The Vin warlord, Kresh, was a mountain of scarred chitin and restless limbs, his 4 eyes burning with predatory contempt. And there was Ambassador Lyra of the Melodians, whose very form was a symphony of shifting light, yet whose song today was a discordant note of judgment. Aris felt the weight of 20 billion souls on her shoulders. She thought of her granddaughter, Lyra, back on Tau Ceti Prime, learning to swim in the azure seas of a world that was about to be ripped from her. The human species stands accused. Velnath's voice was not a sound, but a vibration that resonated in the bones, like the deep chime of a bell forged at the dawn of time. The list of charges unfolded. Violations of the Accord of Peaceful Expansion. Weaponizing forbidden technologies. Colonizing forbidden star systems. Each accusation was a clinical, desiccated thing, stripped of context and desperation. Aris did not rebut with data or legal precedent. She spoke from the heart, her voice, amplified by unseen technology, trembling with a carefully controlled emotion. When the Vin raiders fell upon Tau Ceti, she began, her gaze settling on Kresh, not with anger, but with a profound, weary sadness. They did not just break our buildings. They broke families. They took children from parents, and laughter from the air. We sent our pleas to this council, and we were told it was tribal skirmishing. A natural process. To you, a statistic. To us, it was the end of a world. She turned to the Melodian's shimmering form. When the mother swarm consumed our agricultural worlds on the rim, you called it a galactic pruning. A necessity for ecological balance. For us, it was famine. It was watching our people wither away, their bodies starving because the universe you govern deemed their food source expendable. What were we to do? Lie down and die, because our suffering was inconvenient to your cosmic order? A sound like grinding stones echoed Kresh's laughter. The weak cry, the strong take. This is the only law that matters. Your tears water the soil of your own irrelevance. Is that what civilization is? Aris asked, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried further than a shout. The law of the jungle, gilded with ceremony. We joined you believing in a higher law. A covenant of mutual protection. We believed we were coming home to a family. Now I see we were merely applying for a place in a zoo. Velnith's crystalline form flickered, a sign of impatience. You are children in a cosmos of elders. Children must accept guidance. Your rapid expansion, your reckless innovation, it threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. Your very nature is a spark in a room full of kindling. Our nature is to care for our children. Aris's control finally cracked, a raw, human fissure in the polished floor of diplomacy. Our nature is to fight for survival, to build shelters against the storm, to heal the sick. Is that so monstrous? We innovated because we had to. We expanded because our children needed homes, and the worlds you left fallow and protected were their only chance. The chamber buzzed with overlapping thoughts and transmissions. Aris saw a flicker of something in the light pattern of the Melodian, not agreement, but perhaps a glimmer of understanding. It was a fragile thing, quickly extinguished. The judgment is not open for debate, Velnith intoned, the finality in its voice as absolute as the closing of a tomb. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision. For the security and preservation of the galactic order, humanity is hereby exiled from Council-protected space. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Exile. It was not a word of law, but of poetry. It spoke of tears on a shore, of a last, fading glimpse of a homeland, of a loneliness so profound it became a new atmosphere. Behind Aris, one of her aides, a young man from Mars, let out a choked sob. Where would we go? Aris asked, her voice hollow. You control the light. You command the livable worlds. Are you sentencing 20 billion souls to drift in the dark until our air runs out? The veiled reaches remain unclaimed, Velnith stated, as if describing a slightly undesirable property. It is a region of dynamic astrophysics. Dangerous, yes, but vast. If your species is as adaptable as you claim, you will find a way. You have 30 standard years to evacuate every human presence from our territory. After that, any remnant will be considered an act of war. 30 years. To dismantle a civilization. To say goodbye to Earth, the cradle. To Mars, the defiant red child. To Tau Ceti, the hopeful blue cousin. To gather every last soul, every memory, every dream, and cast them into the unknown. Aris looked at the faces of the council. She saw not malice, but a terrifying, bureaucratic indifference. They were gardeners pruning a troublesome branch, believing it was for the health of the tree. They felt no hatred for the branch. They simply did not care if it died. The cold anger that filled her then was not the hot, explosive kind. It was a deep, glacial certainty. You speak of our nature as a flaw, she said, her voice now steady and clear, a scalpel of sound. You see our love for our children as sentimentality, our will to live as aggression. So be it. We will take our flawed, weeping, loving hearts and our 20 billion fragile lives into your void. We will go. She turned her back on the council, a gesture of such profound disrespect that it silenced the chamber more effectively than any command. As she walked towards the exit, her footsteps the only sound in the immense space, she spoke one last time, not to the council, but to the history that would record this moment. But remember this. You are exiling us not for our weapons, but for our hearts. Not for our crimes, but for our love. And that love will become the foundation of something you cannot even imagine. We will build a home in the darkness, and its light will be the memory of every injustice done here today. History will judge which of us truly understood the meaning of civilization. The great doors thundered shut behind her. In the silence she left behind, Velneth's final words were an epitaph for a relationship that had never truly begun. 30 years, drive, Thorne. Not one day more. But Aris was already gone, her mind not on the past, but on the impossible future. The tears she had not shed in the chamber now streamed down her face, hot and silent. They were not tears of defeat. They were the first waters of a new ocean. The exodus began not with a bang, but with a symphony of sorrow. Captain Eva Rostova stood on the bridge of the generation ship Odyssey, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. On the main viewer, Earth hung like a blue and white marble, achingly beautiful, impossibly distant. She had walked in the redwood forests of California, had swum in the Caribbean seas, had loved and lost under the old, familiar moon. Now, she was watching it all shrink into a star, then into nothing. Captain, we're receiving a priority signal from the Vanguard, her comms officer said, his voice tight. They've got a cascade failure in their primary life support. They're asking for evacuation protocols for the children's creches. Eva closed her eyes. She could see them. The tiny, bewildered faces in their little ship suits, being told they had to leave their home again, to crowd into already overflowing vessels. The simple, brutal math of survival was already carving pieces out of their humanity. Authorize it, she whispered, the words ash in her mouth. And get me a channel to the Vanguard's captain. I'll speak to him myself. The first years were a slow-motion nightmare, a litany of loss etched into ship logs and personal diaries. Systems failed. Resources ran short. A plague swept through the fleet, nicknamed the longing sickness, a deep, psychosomatic despair that weakened the immune system. People died not from enemy fire, but from broken hearts, from the sheer, overwhelming grief of having lost everything. Eva's ship, the Odyssey, became a microcosm of the human struggle. She mediated fights over water rations, comforted children who cried for a planet they'd never see, and presided over funerals that launched shrouded bodies into the endless, indifferent dark. She saw the worst of fear-driven selfishness, but she also saw the best. Engineers working 48-hour shifts to repair a failing oxygenator, strangers sharing their last protein bar, a musician composing a haunting, beautiful elegy for Earth that was transmitted through the entire fleet, giving voice to a grief too large for words. They were not just moving through space. They were a culture in a crucible, being burned down to its essential elements. What would be left when the fires went out? 5 years into the journey, a flicker of hope. The survey ship Pathfinder, probing ahead of the lumbering fleet, discovered the derelict. It was not just a station. It was a corpse of a civilization, a sprawling, beautiful, terrifying thing that floated in the gravitational eddies of the veiled reaches. Its architecture was organic and geometric all at once, as if grown rather than built. Its power sources hummed with energies that defied council physics. Dr. Aris Thorne, now an elder stateswoman traveling with the fleet, was summoned to the Odyssey's bridge to see the first transmissions. Its progenitor, she breathed, her aged eyes wide with a scholar's awe. Or what they left behind. They weren't just advanced, Eva. They were transcendent. The discovery changed everything. A portion of the fleet, led by the Odyssey, would stay to study the derelict. The rest would press on, seeking a world to call their own. It was a risk, splitting their already strained resources, but the potential reward was a future. Aris, despite her years, threw herself into the work. She wasn't an engineer, but she was a reader of stories. While scientists deciphered the technology, she pieced together the history from fragmented records and symbolic art. She learned of the progenitors' greatness, their reach into higher dimensions, and their terrifying encounter with the listeners, the entities that existed beyond the veil of normal space. She learned of their fear, their war, and their ultimate, desperate decision to build the Galactic Council not as a government, but as a quarantine, a nursery to keep younger species safe, quiet, and uninteresting. They didn't exile us out of malice, Eva, Aris told the captain one evening in her quarters, her hands tracing the symbols on a data slate. They did it out of a fear so ancient and deep it has become their religion. We are the noisy child in the library, and they are the librarians terrified we will attract the attention of the monsters outside. Are there monsters? Eva asked, her voice quiet. Oh, yes, Aris said, her gaze distant. But the progenitors tried to fight them, or hide from them. They never tried to understand them. The key breakthrough came from a different kind of mind. Lieutenant Kalin, a young, neurodivergent engineer who saw patterns where others saw chaos, was studying the derelict's navigation systems. He noticed that the violent gravitational anomalies of the veiled reaches weren't random. They were a network, a complex, interwoven highway of twisted space-time. It's a slingshot, he explained to Eva and Aris, his words tumbling out in an excited rush. The progenitors didn't use jump gates. They rode the fabric of the universe. They used the gravity wells like currents in an ocean. We can do this. I can build this. The first test of the shift drive was a leap of faith. Eva herself piloted the shuttle. The experience was not like flying. It was like being unmade and remade. The universe folded around her, and for a terrifying, exhilarating moment, she felt connected to everything, to the dust of dead stars, to the breath of the people light years away, to the silent, watching presence of the listeners. Then it was over. A journey that should have taken months had taken 3 heartbeats. They had turned their prison into a kingdom. The dangerous, chaotic veiled reaches were now humanity's protected, private ocean. When the forward fleet found sanctum, a rogue planet in a perpetual, gentle twilight. It was not just a new world. It was a sanctuary. The city they built there was named New Hope, but its people called it simply, home. The architecture was low and graceful, built to harmonize with the canyons, lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent flora from Earth and a dozen other worlds. The air carried the scent of alien rain and familiar Earth. Children were born who knew only the light of Sanctum's triple suns. They grew up on stories of Earth as a mythical, lost paradise, a place of sorrow and beauty. Their identity was not of exiles, but of pioneers. They were the first true citizens of the eternal ascendancy, though that name was still just a whisper of a dream. 20 years after the exile, Aris Thorne, now bent and frail, walked through the gardens of New Hope with Eva Rostova. The fleet was now a thriving network of hundreds of worlds, connected by the shift drive. They had developed medical technologies that could regenerate limbs, agricultural systems that could make barren rock bloom, and communication systems that allowed instant contact across light years. "We've done more than survive," Aris, Eva said, watching a group of children, human, and a few from other species who had secretly joined them, play a game of tag under the alien sky. "We've become what the Council feared. But we're not monsters." "No," Aris agreed, her voice thin but clear. "We are what happens when love is forced to become strength. The Council saw our connection to each other as a weakness, a chain that bound us to sentiment. They didn't understand it was the very source of our power. It is the quantum entanglement of the heart, Eva. It is what allows us to shift without losing ourselves." She stopped, placing a gnarled hand on Eva's arm. "But the listeners, the progenitors were right to be afraid. Our growth is a beacon. They have noticed us. I feel them sometimes, in the silence between thoughts. They are curious. Let them be curious," Eva said, her jaw set. "We are not the progenitors. We will not fight them, and we will not flee. We will meet them." Aris smiled, a tired, peaceful expression. "I know. And that is why we will not just build an empire, Eva. We will build an eternity. My work is done. The rest is for you, and for them." She nodded towards the children. Aris Thorne died in her sleep that night, under the strange stars of a home she had helped build. She was buried in the soil of Sanctum, and on her simple marker were engraved the words she had spoken to the Council a lifetime ago. "We will build a home in the darkness, and its light will be the memory of every injustice." Her legacy was not a weapon or a treaty, but a new way of being. Under Eva's leadership, now as Imperator, the ascendancy formalized Project Anchor. It was the culmination of Aris's psychological insight and Kalen's engineering genius. Volunteers, the anchors, would remain fully baseline human, their consciousnesses serving as fixed points in reality. Others, the reachers, would use enhanced interfaces to explore higher states of being, their minds quantum entangled with the anchors. It was a society built on a profound and literal trust. The explorers could venture into the terrifying, beautiful realms of the listeners, knowing a piece of their home, a piece of their humanity, was always there to pull them back. They were learning to sing back to the void. 50 years after the exile, the silence from the veiled reaches began to worry the more perceptive members of the council. Inquisitor Valen, a Vin who had studied under the now missing Kalesh, was one of them. He was a warrior, but unlike Kresh, he believed the greatest threat was not the enemy you could see, but the one you had forgotten. When a Vin patrol near the Reach border vanished, then a full battle group, he took a single ship and went to investigate. What he found shattered his understanding of the universe. He expected to find human survivors, perhaps eking out a desperate existence. He did not expect to find an empire. He was detected immediately. His ship was gently, irresistibly guided to a landing on a moon base. The human who greeted him was Commander Isadora Reed, a woman with kind eyes and a mind that felt, to his psychic senses, like a calm, deep ocean. "You are not a prisoner, Inquisitor," she said. "You are a guest. We have been expecting someone like you." Over the following days, Valen was given a tour of the impossible. He saw cities that were living ecosystems. He met humans who existed partially in other dimensions, their forms flickering at the edge of perception, yet who spoke with warmth and humor. He saw Vin, and Melodians, and others, living as equal citizens. He was shown Project Anchor, and the truth of the progenitors and the listeners. His worldview, built on the Council's doctrine of control and limitation, collapsed. The Council wasn't a protector, it was a warden. Humanity wasn't a threat. They were the first species in millennia with the courage to try and grow up. He was given a choice by Imperator Eva Rostova, who had aged into a figure of immense, calm authority. "Return and tell the Council what you have seen," she said. "It will cause panic. They will likely send a fleet, and many will die. Or, stay. Help us prepare for the day we reveal ourselves not as a threat, but as an alternative. Help us build a bridge." Valen thought of the cold, stagnant bureaucracy of the Council. He thought of the vibrant, terrifying, beautiful civilization he had witnessed, a culture that stared into the abyss and tried to make music with it. He thought of Aris Thorne's words, which he had read in their historical archives. He sent a final, encrypted message to the Council: "The exiles have not just survived. They have transcended. The cage we built for them was the forge in which they tempered their souls. Tread carefully. You are not dealing with humans anymore. You are dealing with the future." Then he requested asylum. 130 years after the exile, the Galactic Council was dying. It was not a violent death, but a quiet one, a death of irrelevance. Species were leaving, drawn by whispers of the eternal ascendancy, a place where they were not treated as children. Architect Prime Velnath, older now than stone, watched the dissolution from his crystalline spire. The reports were undeniable. The humans had not perished. They had flourished, and they had uncovered the progenitors' secret. When the Ascendancy's fleet finally appeared in the heart of Council space, it was not an invasion. It was a revelation. Ships phased into existence without gates, their designs a blend of biology and art. The flagship was the Aris Thorne. Imperator Eva Rostova's message was broadcast galaxy-wide. She was old, her face a map of lines, but her voice was the same one that had commanded the Odyssey. "People of the galaxy," she began, and she spoke not of weapons or conquest, but of choice. She spoke of the progenitors, fear in the Council's well-intentioned prison. She revealed the existence of the listeners, not as monsters to be feared, but as neighbors in a larger cosmos. The old choice was to hide or be consumed, she said. We offer a third path. To understand, to coexist, to grow. We have built a civilization that is not afraid of the dark, because we have learned to carry our own light. That light is our connection to each other. It is our love, our memory, our shared sorrow and our shared hope. It is what makes us eternal. The transmission showed the anchor system, the harmonious, if tense, communications with the listeners, the multi-species communities thriving on sanctum. It showed a future. Velnith's response was a whisper of ancient fear. You will doom us all. The doom you fear is stagnation, Eva replied gently. We offer life, with all its risks and all its glory. The cage door is open. You can remain in the safety of what was, or you can step forward into what might be. The schism was peaceful. Billions chose the safety of the Council's preserve. But trillions more, entire species and countless individuals from every civilization, chose the ascendancy. The galaxy was forever changed. Eva, in the final years of her long life, stood with Valen on a balcony overlooking the city of New Hope. Below them, a being of shimmering energy, a listener who had chosen to manifest, was conversing with a group of anchor children, their laughter ringing in the twilight. Did we do the right thing? Valen asked, the question that had haunted him for decades. Eva watched the scene below, a tear tracing a path through the wrinkles on her cheek. It was not a tear of sadness, but of awe. We gave them a choice, she said softly. The progenitors built a cage out of love. The Council maintained it out of fear. We simply offered a key. Look at them, Valen. They are not afraid. She gestured to the children, to the human and listener communicating without words, to the city that pulsed with a gentle, living light. The Council exiled a species of emotional, vulnerable apes, she whispered. And in doing so, they forced us to discover that our emotions were not a weakness, but the highest form of strength. Our love for each other is the energy that powers our shift drives. Our memory of loss is the gravity that holds our empire together. Our hope is the dimension in which we truly live. She turned to him, her old eyes bright with starlight. They thought they were casting us into oblivion. Instead, they sent us to find eternity. And we found it not in power, but in the simple, enduring act of caring for one another, across space, across time, and across the vast, silent distances between souls. In the deepening dusk, the first stars of a new, unified galaxy began to appear. The empire of the eternal ascendancy did not rule the galaxy by force. It wove itself through it, a tapestry of connected lives and shared consciousness, a civilization whose borders were not in space, but in the heart. And its power, born from exile and forged in sorrow, truly did stretch across eternity.